thought they could make that fight soon, they would.
Everyone's kind of seeing Canelo Golovkin taking down the same path as Mayweather-Pacquiao, the same scenario of prolonging it, to maximize.
I would say this. Jim asked me on the fight game, what's the expiration date? I mean, there's no real expiration date. We still watch Mayweather-Pacquiao years after the expiration date. But I would say people can genuinely start complaining if Cinco de Mayo of next year comes and goes and they still haven't fought. Then you can start complaining at Canelo. But I do think that if you're Canelo Alvarez and you're generating all this money, and there's the biggest threat by far is still he's a major attraction, obviously, but still hasn't proven a pay-per-view attraction that can do 500,000 buys or more. Obviously, you'd like him to build up a little more, and you'd like maybe to take a few more money fights before you risk it all. And by Canelo, I don't mean Canelo. Canelo doesn't care. I mean Golden Boy, because they're running a business over there, and if you have a meal ticket, you don't just throw him in with a guy who'd be favored to beat him. You'd like that guy who's favored to beat him to build up his star as big as possible, and you'd like your guy, meantime, to cash some paychecks on the way to that happening. So I would say all that is fair game. If you know the history of boxing, that stuff always happens. If that process goes by Cinco de Mayo of next year, then fans have a right to say, yo, you're ducking. That's enough, you're ducking.
Shouldn't Golovkin cater to his demands? I mean, is he not that?
Those are all negotiations. This is something when people first started hearing Floyd and Pacquiao going back and forth about that, everyone heard that as, recently before the fight, everyone heard that as bad news. I heard that as negotiating. Look, they're talking. That's better than not talking. And when you hear Triple G and Canelo start 157, 150 this, what's happening is a negotiation, and that's good news.
Do you think the WBC will actually strip him if the fight doesn't happen next?
Yeah, I do. I think they're boxed. I think they have to. What's that?
Where is the limit to A-side advantage? When we're talking about 155 pounds.
If you think this is A-side advantages, look throughout boxing history. It's not like it's worse than it's ever been. If anything, like Sugar Ray Leonard won like 16 titles the night he fought Donnie Lalonde at a catch weight. That stuff always happened.
But Golovkin having a shortage of opponents, Kellerman kind of threw himself in there. What do you take to Golovkin Brook as a kind of catch weight?
If Kell Brook really wants to fight Gennady Golovkin, I'm sure that can be arranged. I'd be shocked if Gennady's side didn't want to fight.
What does Gennady do to get 560?
What's that?
What do you make of the 155, 160 in terms of the example it shows other fighters coming up?
For who? Who are you talking about now?
Canelo saying, I'm in 155.
Well, here's the thing about a catch weight fight. A catch weight fight is fine. There have always been catch weight fights too. This is not like something new. Every generation forgets what happened before, or maybe they don't know. Catch weight's fights, it's not like that's a brand new term. What I do agree with fans who are angry about it though, is that the middleweight division is defined as weight limit 160 pounds. That's a middleweight. You can weigh less, but you can't weigh more. But if in the contract it says you have to weigh less than 160, you're not fighting at middleweight. That's not a middleweight fight. If the contract stipulates you can't weigh 160 pounds, by definition, that's not a middleweight fight. So, and therefore, Gennady Golovkin now has practically universal recognition as the real champ in the division, because the other guy and the guy before him, Miguel Cotto, weren't fighting at middleweight.
If you're Triple G, do you stay at 160 or do you go 168?
I go where the money is at this point.
Out the money.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you're Triple G, you get in with the biggest name fighter that'll fight you.
And how much time do you think Triple G has? 35, 34? 34. How much time?
Abel Sanchez makes the point that Triple G has fewer professional fights than Canelo Alvarez, and that he's a relatively young 34 because he didn't turn pro until his mid-20s. And then he didn't really fight world-class opposition until he was almost 30. But he did have a lot of amateur fights. The funny thing about punchers is, a lot of times people think they're taking a lot of shots. For example, Muhammad Ali seemed to be very damaged by the end of his career. George Foreman didn't. So why is that? Foreman didn't have Ali's defense because for $1,500 a week, sparring partners weren't going to come in and take chances against George Foreman, who was going to take their head off. But they would against Muhammad Ali, who wasn't going to hurt him. So guys like Golovkin can be very well preserved later into their careers because, in fact, in spite of the fact that they're not defensive geniuses, you know, like a Rigondeaux or an Andre Ward, they ain't taken that many shots, really. Good?
Thank you, Kellerman. Appreciate it.
All right, brother.
You touched them.
Huh?
You touched them.